So today I want to talk about, in a two-part series, how I kind of understand what it means to be neurodivergent and autistic compared to like the normal theories. And I want to present a little bit of a theory about what it means, how we think, and actually and where it comes from. So brief overview what neurodivergent is and what it means to be autistic. Well, neurodivergent was, for anyone that thinks differently than outside norm, that normal psychology doesn't really apply anymore. This can be from this can be from emotions, this can be from thinking patterns to sensitivity to senses to actual how you think and compute to like communication patterns that are just way outside the norm, that you can't just use a normal thing, and that it might lead to difficulties interacting with more normal people. It includes mainly, it was coined around the autistic community, but it also includes the ADHD community. It includes the dyslexic to some extent. If there was no person that coined the term included dyslexics, but not all dyslexics consider themselves neurodivergent. It included other things like dyslexia, dyscalculia, Tourette's, both stuff does not much as a learning disorder like Tourette's and stuff like that. Some people included things they get later in life like PTSD or depression or mental health illnesses. There isn't always a clear definition. And I'm not for too much gatekeeping. So if you feel like it fits to you, I think it fits to you. A brief overview of autism. Autism, the diagnosis still keeps changing to some extent. There's some common ground. So I would actually say the self-diagnosed and what the autistic community identifies as who's autistic is actually kind of better than the medical ones that are approaching it but keep deferring it, which is sounds a little strange, but I would heavily defend that. Because like the old diagnosis used to include, it was only male, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, yeah, no. They actually restressed the male part, even though they were few. But that led to a lot of people that weren't cis male, especially with female anatomy, being underdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all, or confusing with other things, and still has led to that. Then there's like a bunch of other weird criteria that has nothing to do with the brain that we mostly gotten rid of, but that prejudice and other things have still stuck with it. It also and leading to a lot of underdiagnosis in certain groups of people, and it's just really bad. But the official definition of autism nowadays, according to DSM-5, and every country has. Now, a warning about the diagnostic manuals is that the diagnostic manuals are updated every few years. Some people use older versions. Some people use older versions in some cases and new versions in other cases, depending on what they're diagnosing. Some people, the DSM-5 is one of the biggest one, but some people don't use the DSM-5 and so they use the ICD something, which the UK uses and a couple other countries. Some countries don't have a uniform way. And some people use the slightly combinations of it. So even when you have something like DSM-5, people use different tests based on it. So there are different ways of assessing it. But according to the DSM, you have to meet these criteria. So you have to have 3 areas of social communication interactions deficits, plus at least 2 of the 4 typical types of restricted repetitive behavior. So from A, they say persistent deficits in social communications and social interactions across multiple contexts as manifested by the following currently or by history. Examples are illustrated, not exhaustive, see text. Deficits in social emotional reciprocity. So that means like if I do something, seeing the emotions that you give back, and if you do something, seeing the emotions you give back and forth. So if you yell at me, I respond back in a certain way. Or if I yell at you, you respond back in a certain way. Or anything from giving, stuff like that. Ranging, for example, from abnormal social approach. So that means that we just interact in a weird way, and fear of normal back and forth conversations, to do sharing of interest, emotions, or affect, to failure to initiate or respond to social interactions. Now, this is, in my opinion, kind of problematic in many autistics, because it makes it sound like a very deficit bad thing, but it could also depend on that's a deficit from the psychologist or the societal standpoint, not for the people always. So, reduced sharing of interest. Well, sometimes that can be that someone's just not interested, literally not autistic, we're not interested in talking about the same subject as you. So we just don't have that joy of just talking about the weather or something that just happened to you that just doesn't interest us. Doesn't mean we can pass in other cases, just not in that case. To reduce emotions. That means that it might mean that we don't care about gossip or certain other things, but we can still be very emotional. If something bad happened to a friend or someone we care about, in fact, a lot of autistic people are hyper empathetic. It's just that we might not be, when we know something bad or understand something bad happens, we just might not, or we worry about offending others, we just might not even realize we offended someone, therefore not act on it, or we might not care about certain specific things, like we might not care that a person about a person getting married or something. We might love it when they see the smile on the face. It's not the marriage that made us happy, it's that they're happy for being married. Or it might be something else. It's just that it's not typical, so it seems like a deficit. Or affect. Affect means that we just might not know what's going on. And these are all developmental, so this might be in a young child, but over time they might learn about the world and start affecting it because they might just not have realized it yet. To fail to initiate or respond to social interactions. Again, that might be just that they don't know what's going on around them, and it's not that they're rude or mean or anything, or that they just don't know stuff in the same way, or they don't care about pleasing people. Like a lot of autistics don't care about pleasing people in the same ways or the same manners and stuff like that. Social emotional reciprocity, that can be anything. It might mean that they just don't read the room very well, or anything like that, or that they just respond in odd ways, like your feelings are hurt, but they might, instead of saying something to calm you down, they might give you an item and do something strange to try to cheer you up. Just like, it doesn't actually mean a deficit, it just means they're different, and people don't realize it. This is a non-verbal communication behavior used for social interaction, ranging from, for example, from poorly integrated verbal and non-verbal communication. So a big deal makes eye contact, but a lot of us have a hard time with eye contact, and we can't actually focus on what you're thinking when we make bad eye contact. Some of us have trouble reading facial expressions and stuff like that, but we might read other expressions better. Like, oftentimes, non-autistics overread into little details when it could be not good. Like maybe that person isn't actually angry with you; they're just overtired, so they're making that face, and you're overreading into whatever expression is going on, whatever's going on in the moment, and you don't even realize that you're overreading it or overdoing it. It's not really more about maybe direct communication, and whenever someone directly communicates, you always think there's an ulterior motive, something like that. To abnormalities in eye contact and body languages. Okay, eye contact, I went over that, and body language, I definitely understand the use of gestures. A lot of us actually do use gestures, but we use different gestures, like we wave our hands to indicate general mood levels, but you just read it wrong. We stim ways, stimming is when we do something to make ourselves feel good or get out emotions. With with our senses like flapping or looking at certain things. But like we might use a lot of gestures, but they're like pointing or something like that, or we might use less. There's people on autistic posts that use almost no body language and use a ton of words. To a total lack of facial expression and nonverbal communication. Again, different autistics with both of these 1 and 2 have in very different forms to a very different extent, and it's not something you have to be autistic or not. But I'm just saying that this deficit approach kind of is off if you really know who's autistic based on even diagnosis. This is in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships, ranging, for example, from difficult to adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts to difficult in sharing imaginative play or making friends to absence or interest in peers. Okay, I have a big issue with a lot of this one, but it's true from the psychological standpoint. A lot of autistic people do have, like including me, have trouble from going from normal, from one place to another place. If I'm talking to a friend and I talk to a professor, I might use the same language. So I might not transition to not using swear words well, or I might still lack this informal language. I might not use the proper address and stuff like that. So that's some of the social switching they're talking about. But it doesn't mean we don't understand what's appropriate or not. It's just that we don't get these minor little inconveniences. So I think that you guys overthink these stuff, and it can lead to you judging how smart or intelligent a person is based on things that do not actually matter. This can hurt all sorts of people that might not have learned the language or how to speak fancy and stuff to a professor, but have excellent ideas. And you judge people all the time by how they speak and not what they say. So that's that goes in sharing in a positive way or making friends. So the sharing is a big important part. And the thing is, not everything, sharing isn't always caring. Because sometimes it just means that someone else is overstepping their boundaries or into your boundaries. Or sometimes sometimes some autistics prefer to play alone or be alone and think of a world, or they want to only work with someone with similar wavelengths, and you're just not on their wavelength, which is fine. But a lot of us love sharing and geeking out and stuff, but it's with people that have similar geek outs and share out, not just anybody. Well, non-autistics just socialize with everyone in the same way. Making friends. A lot of us don't make friends well because we're weird, and people just bully us and stuff like that, and that's not our fault. The absence of interest in peers. A lot of times we are interested in people, but we're just not interested in people that, in everybody or everything. We're interested in the people that are interested in us back and have similarities and stuff like that. It's not, and a lot of non-autistics fake interest, fake having friends. They're like, and are so fake with the relationships. Then when we have more just genuine real relationships, that makes it look like we have less relationships or harder. And a lot of us also take longer to form good friendships, so we have different types of friendships that are more like, we go out to less basketball games or to mall or do nothing. When we do stuff together, we do stuff together, like we're talking or nerdy and geeking out in ways that might not look like we're having friends to you. Severity is so these are the B ones that you have to have a couple of. Restricted repetitive patterns or behaviors, interests or activities as manifested by at least two or following currently or by history. Stereotyped repetitive behaviors. So stereotype means it's behaviors that you kind of are either mimicking other people or you're mimicking an idea and kind of overly doing it, like repeating someone else's voice or acting or doing this whole acting routine every time someone says thank you. So you might say thank you with a certain voice or way, or repetitive motor movements of just moving in certain ways, use of objects or speech, all repetitive or acting. So simple motor things, lining up toys or flipping objects, echolalia, idiocentric phrases. So I want to say simple motor stereotypes. So like lining up of toys or flipping objects are super harmless. I mean, it could be someone that's like every time they say hello, saying hello in a way they've heard it a long time ago, or lighting up or flipping out because it has some meaning to them or makes them calm. If it makes someone calm and happy or helps them, why is that bad? And also simple motor, also like sometimes when people do something called scripting, where they, not all autistics do it, but some people do it, where they copy like phrases from movies or something like that, and the way they do it in movies, or they've seen someone else do it, and it can be a very useful way of communicating that's valid, because it can that scripting might be something that brings back memories or have additional meanings because of the emotions and stuff like that. It's like when you're with a friend, you might have like little code words or something about that brings back memories of things you did together or something like that. Like, oh, I might say like banana, and like, oh yeah, I remember the time that banana this blah blah blah, like something silly like that. So it can, and scripting also means you can have to put less thought in how you talk, so you can put more thought elsewhere, something like that. Which is okay. Ekulala, Layla, have always trouble saying that, is when you repeat noises or sounds you hear over and over again, and this can happen either as a way the autistic person is calming down themselves, or it can be that they're very overwhelmed at just repeating everything. This can be troublesome for some people at times. Like, it's troublesome to me that I can't go to a lot of places with protests or loud chants, because I can't control what comes out of my mouth then, because I'm just repeating stuff without thinking. It got a black autistic Matthew Weston arrested because some guy was yelling out at him awful stuff and repeated it. And that was used against him in court. And the court case was awful, and I would say you should read up on it. Idiosyncratic phrases, those are just phrases they heard, they just use over and over again. Second one, insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior. They make it sound all bad. It can be annoying, but living a routine life can also make life very predictable and easy in some ways, that you can do more with your life because you don't have to think about all these other things in your life. So, and it can lead to also you perfecting one little aspect of your life. Like if you cook the same meal every day, you can get very good at cooking that one meal. If every day you do the same routine, you can get very, very good at it. So there's actually some even pros and cons there. Highly restricted fixate interests that are abnormal intensity or focus. Strong occupations with preoccupation with unusual objects, excess circumstance, or preservative interest. That's just having a very special interest, which almost every autistic has, and it is wonderful and great. It can be a great source of happiness. It can be a great source of facts. It can also help a lot of other people, and it can be so good, and it's not a bad thing, really. This last one is, I'm going to talk in my part 2 a lot more, but hyper or hyporeactive to sensory inputs or unusual interest in sensory aspects of environment. So a lot of autistics have weird reactions to sensory inputs, and it's called sensory processing disorder, more broadly for non-autistic or autistics alike. That's when you're either very sensitive to a sense, like very sensitive to light or something, or not at all sensitive, or you react to in very strange ways, that you're sometimes super sensitive, sometimes not super sensitive, or how you think about it's weird, or it causes weird reactions in your body, like you mix up hunger and thirst. And then also unusual interest, that's sometimes like certain senses have like unusual impacts, like make us either very happy or unhappy, like certain sounds or something like that impact us, which is not necessarily always a bad thing. Severity is based on social community impairments and restrictive repetitive behavior, blah, blah, blah. So that is what the DSM says right now. Again, it makes everything sound very extremely negative. But in my part 2 of this video, which I'm not going to be yet because this video is kind of long already and a bit tired, is I'll discuss what my theory of why our brains are wired differently and neurodivergent and how they're wired differently and how there's positive and cons. And I'm also related to computers and the different software models. Like different softwares have different advantages and cons, and you can't have everything great, but if you look at it only through a certain lens, you see a deficit when there might not be a deficit. Well, thank you very much. I'm trying to reach to 1,000 subscribers within about a year, and 40,000 watch hours, which is a really hard goal, but with all your help, I think I can make it. Thank you very much. Please subscribe, like, and share, and comment if you want to. Goodbye.